All
There we
right,
go.
we're in there.
Well, no, it's a recording. That's not live.
It says live on mine.
Okay, mine says in recording. Okay.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, it's Wednesday, the day after the elections. And we've got some stuff to cover on that for sure. But whoa, before we get into that, how was your week, Sam?
Man, the week's been a really good week. I'm getting ready to leave to go out to Vegas tomorrow. Um, Early trip, starting with Soul Train, and then go right into BizCon. So, just a week of planning. A lot of activities just been going on. Of course, I got my vote in. I actually did my voting 3 weeks ago. So it's really down to the wire. So
It's not
governor's
over.
race has pretty much been closed out. So that kind of went the way how we thought it was going to go. And then for our Senate candidates, it's literally down to the wire.
And from what I see, we're not the only state. There are a few others that have it, but it's probably going to come down to Georgia in terms of where it sits in the Senate, because there's going to be a runoff.
Yeah, obviously it is. Right now, the poll that I'm looking at, Senator Warnock is actually in the lead by 36,000 votes, give or take. And when you think about your representation, these are the things that you want to be aware of, so that way you know who to talk to, who to get a message to, so that way for any cause that we're fighting for, we know who we need to speak to. So we definitely need to continue to monitor that. Congratulations to Governor Kemp for winning another term. Um, there's still some outstanding um, deliverables on his end that we're expecting him to stay true to. So we
But we'd
definitely,
also like him to change his view on a few things, like he said about the legalization, when he simply stated wasn't for or against. All he says, I'm going to keep my campaign promise to fix the gang related activities. And that's all he would say.
well, I don't particularly recall him speaking about gang related activities in his
Right.
initial gubernatorial campaign. So on that end, he's stirring the pot on that one, but we still got to hold him to what's necessary. He's going to his second term, so that means he either can establish his legacy um, based off of keeping his word.
Right. Because I don't remember him making that stance either in the very first one. However, that is what he stated in the debate when it was asked between Shane Hazel, Stacey Abrams, and himself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the thing that we all have to pay attention to is what these people are saying, and then actually questioning them about some of the things they're talking about. It's almost kind of like a way to distract or not answer a question. It's really politics itself, in my opinion, is definitely a slippery slope. Sometimes when you tackle that mountain, you're gonna slide right off the side of it, and it's just because you can't make everybody happy. And the thing about it is, it really goes down to a popular belief, not a popular vote, a popular belief. If I have the same belief system that you have, then together those two beliefs is at least you got two beliefs instead of one, even though it's one belief. It's two. You got two people. Once you get more, those are the commonalities when it comes to the vote itself. How many people believe in this person in particular?
Right. And just like you're saying, now that not just here in Georgia, but across the nation, people are now in those positions, hold them accountable, because we actually have something coming up in the notes about that.
Yeah,
But it's not just now, it's 6 months down the road, it's a year down the road, it's their entire term.
absolutely. And that term is faced with challenges, because you will have other politicians who may disagree with your stance and viewpoint, and may challenge it. And then even the public at large itself, we still have our say so as well, and the public at large can push back and challenge it as well. So there's you know there's no comfortable place for anybody that runs for office, in my opinion. You're going to have challenges because you have two sides to everything, just like you got two sides to a coin.
Well, beyond the challenges, for example, yes, we need to hold, like we've discussed, Biden accountable for what he stated. But when he ran in presidency, when Kemp here in Georgia ran for governor, we didn't see a pandemic in front of us at that time of election.
No, absolutely not. And the decisions that came along with it, what I definitely got to say is salute to Governor Kemp for taking the chance to make sure that people who wanted to still earn an honest living could still get out there and safely do it. Once we were aware that we needed to take the necessary precautions, wearing your mask was one of the first necessary precautions that was given by the CDC. We adhered to that, and we continued to keep ourselves safe. For the ones who went out and got their vaccination, like I said, salute to those people as well, because they took the second step that was given and provided to keep people safe. So there was a lot of people that conformed to those terms, and they kept themselves in a safe place, in a safe space. I myself was one of those people who thrived off of working around people. Just the industry that I have serviced for almost 30 years. I have been around people, and the thing about it is that I kept my mask on. I got my vaccination shot. I did what was necessary for me to still conduct business and facilitate business safely, to still be able to provide for my family, and that's what's most important.
Absolutely. And to this day, we still see that. Last night, for example, I was watching the news here in Georgia, and one of the reporters was talking to one of the candidates. During the interview, you could see him with the mask off, or on, I'm sorry. But then when he was doing his own in the camera report, he did not have it on. So people are still using the mask. And if that's a level of safety and comfort, do it. Be safe for you and your family.
Absolutely. And just my own personal feelings and sentiments, when you think about the virus itself, we're in fall going into winter.
Big flu season.
And the temperature has changed drastically. There from one day to the next, it's up and then it's back down. It opens you up to illness, virus, cold, flu, God forbid, pneumonia. Those type of symptoms are precursors, possibly to COVID. I can't say because I'm not a doctor, but those are elements that can contribute to an illness that a lot of people wasn't prepared to deal with.
Well, and also before we get into the notes, another thing too, we're heading towards that season, not just the cold, the holidays, everything else. And like you said about sickness, we're getting that season where a lot of people feel low, depression. Depression can bring on other symptoms. You can get sick quicker. Your body gets strained. So everybody take care of yourself. And there's people to help. There's national suicide hotlines. Like we said, it's an all year thing, not that 1 month. So if you feel that you need to reach out to somebody, do it. We'll provide that information on our site, on our Instagram, however we need to help you out. But I encourage everybody, stay on top of that. This season can be rough.
Absolutely. The holidays with and without loved ones is definitely a challenge. And I don't know any family or household that is not missing a loved one, or in a household that may be going through a financial setback, or sickness itself. So those are things that change and can affect a person on a daily. And mental health is very, very important. We want you to stay in front of those concerns and maintain a good balance, and then also seek a good support system, a good family member, a good friend, someone to talk to. It definitely goes a long way. Doing the things to maintain optimum health. We definitely, in next month, we'll be talking about fitness and health as it relates to our bodies, in the use of cannabis and CBD. Those things are very important to maintain just a balance all the way across the board, for your body and your mind to continue to go and deal with what we're dealing with in society today.
Absolutely. So I don't know if you saw this or not. Sean P. Diddy Combs has agreed to buy 9 cannabis retail stores, 3 production facilities in Illinois, New York, and Massachusetts as part of a $185 million required antitrust for the pending $2 billion sale of Cresco Columbia Care merger.
Oh, wow.
How big is that? Not just for Puff, but for the industry.
That is huge. One thing for people to continue to join into the fight, and a high profile figure like Diddy jumping in and joining the fight is really, really important. Really, really important.
A national mogul from entertainment, music, you name it. And now he's jumping in on this. He's got as much influence across the nation as anybody.
Absolutely. Hold on 1 second there. I got a noise.
Yeah, but I'll go ahead and mention this next little part here while you're taking care of that. Columbia Care, just for those who are not familiar with it, it started as a medical-only operator roughly 10 years ago. It's grown into one of the largest multi-state cannabis companies in the U.S. It's got a footprint of over 18 states. It's including 99 dispensaries, 32 cultivation facilities. So this is going to give Sean entrance into so many different areas, different regions, different aspects. And as you were mentioning, Tim, we're going to be in Vegas next week for MJ BizCon. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of buzz there over it because this is big on multiple facets. Yes, as we stated, it's Columbia Care primarily is the medical end. The other end there with Cresco is going to be the other facets of cannabis, which we could see this go from clothing to the medical end to the recreational end to who knows what. The opportunity is literally just going to be endless, I think. And it's a huge, huge merger, not just for those states, but for the whole nation and us moving forward with this.
Definitely, Nate. And what I got to say about that is that as we get more people to join into the fight, it's really important where you got one high net worth individual that made the jump into the industry. We still can all put our dollars together individually, whether it's $100, whether it's $1,000, start a group, and we can do all of the things that we need to develop the next step for this industry, to create the normalcy that we're looking for.
Yep. And we're about to get into what happened with the elections yesterday in multiple states, what was on the ballot. But here's the story I think is really interesting going into that, if you hadn't heard. Democrat Anthony Tony DeLuca, he won re-election in Pennsylvania. But here's the catch. Tony actually died October 9th. He had a brief battle with lymphoma, a disease he twice beat. He was 85 and he won the re-election on Tuesday. Now, they're saying a special election will follow because his opponent, challenger of the Green Party, they feel like enough people in the area weren't wanting to go that route. So if they voted in the gentleman who was reelected, now they can have the special runoff.
And, what state was this, Nate?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yes. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up is the Green Party challenger. 3 of the main priorities on her website is environmental justice, ending the war on drugs, and reducing gun violence. Now, I can't speak on exactly what DeLuca's mindset was there, but the reason why I was wanting to bring this up is not only is it interesting that we have someone who has passed away that was reelected, but we have a Green Party candidate who wants to help in the war on drugs, and that individual was not put in a state where your governor is wanting to also end the war on drugs.
Yeah, that's that situation where a lot of people are on the fence. We had the discussion before about Pennsylvania and Delaware, how Delaware would set up a sting for you once you cross the state line from out of Pennsylvania. So it's very interesting how they play the politics in that part of the country.
No, absolutely it is. Now, getting to Nevada. One of this we touched on, the other one we didn't. But so what we have is Nevada, as we mentioned, is rescheduling. The district court judge ordered the Nevada State Board of Pharmacy to remove cannabis from Scheduled 1. The ruling
Big ups to
stated
that.
that the board has no authority to regulate cannabis, thus it must deschedule. The fact that marijuana is illegal at the federal level is not relevant to them, said the executive director of American Civil Liberty Union of Nevada.
You know, one thing I can say about Nevada, they wrote their own rules and played it their way. They've been doing that for a long time. So big shout outs to Nevada for standing strong for what they believe in. They have laws in that state that are no good in other states.
Right.
But they themselves they play a set of cards and they've stacked their own deck. So big shout out to Nevada on that.
Now, unfortunately, you and I, though, I do have some good news, bad news when it comes to Nevada, because the second end of the Nevada news, the state's Cannabis Compliance Board released figures showing over 100 applicants for 40 consumption lounge licenses. The process of awarding the license involves different types of establishments and different types of applicants. But unfortunately for us, the state officials anticipate the lounges won't open until early 2023. So when we're there next week, we won't be able to be there.
Yeah. You know, everything's a process, and the process takes time. And I think part of the process is perfection. You want to get it right for everybody. So I'm not upset at that, but hey, get on it. You need it.
Well, it's just a start. And, yes, it'd be really neat to see that because we've been to the hookah lounges here in Atlanta. So if it's anything like that, I could see how huge it would be.
It definitely will. And it's going to open up even more. It's all about safe consumption. And there has to be some form of standard in place to protect the public as well.
Oh, absolutely. So commend Nevada for that. Can't wait to see how that works out. Definitely keep in touch with my friends who are out there for when it happens, because I'm sure they'll be there. I'd love to hear more about it, and I'd love to see other states follow suit.
Absolutely. As you think about in the western part of the country, alcoholism has been a contributor to a lot of accidents and a lot of tragedies that have occurred. So when you think about consumption, you can get cannabis consumption where you have the cannabis intoxication itself. That is a concern. That's something that I think about first and foremost, that definitely there needs to be some form of regulatory factor to prevent it, and also try to help safeguard people in that circumstance. So the license holders for those lounges, they have a great responsibility, just like a bar or lounge.
Absolutely. Now, we just spoke on 2023 because of Nevada. Now here's something for Mississippi in 2023. That's when the sales of medical cannabis will begin. The state issued license to cultivators, dispensaries, processors, and various others involved in the process of bringing it to the market. To start, all these people will be serving only 406 patients, but the industry is expected to grow significantly in the next few years.
You know, what I got to say on that is that 406 are the registered patients who have some form of illness or affliction that has needed treatment, and they may have their medical cards already in place. The moment that the public at large know the process of getting their medical card to be able to get on the listing for treatment, that number will grow by leaps and bounds. So everybody that's in Mississippi that needs your medicine, make sure you pay attention to what's going on with your state there and get properly registered so you can get the treatment you need.
No, absolutely. Because right now, more than 2/3 of Americans support legalization compared to less than 50% 10 years ago. And that's when Colorado and Washington first legalized recreational.
Absolutely. And what has to happen is we got to continue to keep talking about it, like we're doing on this podcast and show, just making people aware of the changes that are here to come. And it's really, really important that we talk about it and get more people to join in the conversation. Any facet or understanding that they have in it will shed more light in the industry and allow people to be educated properly, instead of a bunch of false myths out there from old mindsets who really did not educate themselves or do their due diligence to find out the actual fact of the matter that goes on with the power of the plant.
No, absolutely. Because now what we're about to get into is what actually happened with those 5 states that had it on the ballot yesterday. So, for example, Maryland voted to approve the referendum to legalize. They passed at 65%. Roughly, they had 963,000 people vote yes, 506,000 vote no. Now, I've given you a couple of numbers here because, of course, we've got these states where people are under the age of voting, whatnot, and some people who, of course, didn't vote. Maryland, for example, has 6 million in population.
25% voted.
Right. Now, I can't state that that means that only 25% of the people throughout Maryland voted as a whole. I just know on this individual. But that goes to show that we're not getting enough people voting on these instances. Either they're surpassing it altogether or they're just not voting in general.
You know, Nate, and this is my personal opinion. I think that the world itself, there are so many distractions that are going on. And I think that because when you deal with, voter suppression, different scandals when it comes to the elections, I think some people are just totally over it. I think that it is an emotional circumstance when you vote, and then let's just say you voted and your candidate didn't get in and you're upset about that. Those are things that will discourage you from going out to vote, possibly when your candidate don't get in and you feel yourself, man, my vote didn't do anything. And you don't have the representation in office to reflect the views that you feel and have. So you may feel shunned. And a lot of those people may feel that way. And you're talking about 75% didn't vote. But you got to ask yourself, what percentage of that is shut in the hospital, right, sick, not able to actually get out and vote, may not have a vehicle to drive to get out and vote, may not be able to walk healthily to get to a poll to actually go cast a vote. Imagine anybody who is broken a leg or in a cast or in a splint, under some form of pain management, and they just can't get out the door. You got to look at that part of the percentage. You also got to look at how many may have been incarcerated.
Right.
You got 6 million people. What percentage of them are incarcerated? And I'm sure that's another percentage, could be 5, 10, 15, 20% of the population that could be incarcerated as well, which contribute to a number of people not being able to vote. So when you compile those numbers, adverse circumstances, let's just also look at the census. What about people who may have passed away over the last year? And those are listed as eligible voters, and there is no record of them, in that number as well. So that number can easily be at about 30% of that 6 million, which is about another 1.8 million in people, which could be closer to half. So, there are figures that we have to look at that we don't have available to us in this discussion, but you have to look at those as well to know that those may have contributed to the lack of votes for that state.
No, and that's great points because, for example, in that 6 million in population, of course, is those who are, as you said, incarcerated, who have passed in the last year, because that number is going to be when they did the census, not what is current. So those under 18, those are incarcerated, those who have passed. But let's also remember there are certain charges that you could have that you could lose that privilege to vote. Even though you're not incarcerated, you still could have lost that at that time, and your number would still be included in that 6 million.
Absolutely. And what I think the biggest thing when we talk numbers, the factors that go into it, for the people who are very responsive and astute when it comes to life, liberty, the those are the people who will lead us into the next area of where we need to be at. So I think that there are some people that will be making the decisions for us, and people from a societal standpoint will go along with what the majority rules on that circumstance.
Yep. And now one of the bright sides too with this in Maryland, passage of this amendment triggered a complementary bill that will expunge convictions for conduct that became legal under the new law, provided grants to better support minorities, women-owned businesses in the cannabis industry, and remove criminal penalties for possession of 2.5 ounces or less. Purchase and possession of 1.5 ounces of cannabis is now legal for those above 21, and adults can grow up to 2 plants for personal use.
Wow. That's tremendous.
Right. Now, it's going to take a little bit of time, though, because the implication of this, the possession will become a civil offense on January 1st, 2023, with legalization for up to 1.5 ounces happening 6 months later. So even though this has happened, do your research to understand where the laws are, when they take effect, and how they'll affect you.
And that old saying about ignorance of the law,
Right.
Please, everyone, take the time to be aware, listen, join the discussion in various podcasts that are out there to know what you can and what you can't do in your home state. Know what you can and can't do when you cross the state lines. Know what you can and can't do when you cross the county lines, because from one county to the next, it may vary. You may be in a city that has a decrim on cannabis possession, but guess what? That neighboring county may not have a decrim.
Right.
So that's the difference of you getting a ticket and going to jail. So
Correct.
Please be aware of where you are and what the laws of the land.
Yep. Now, for example, Missouri, they voted to pass cannabis legalization on the ballot. They passed it at 54% yes, 46% no. 937,000 voted yes, 799 voted no. And again, for them, they have a population of 6.2 million. So 1,736,000 people voted on this particular legalization ballot.
Wow. That one right there is just shocking. The comparison and contrast with the prior state is almost similar. And that just kind of tells you where people are when it comes to elections. I think it's a lot of people who have the feelings and sentiment that their vote doesn't count when it truly actually does. And how close some of these elections are coming down to it. When you take 75, 80% of the population hadn't voted. You can easily put the wrong representative in office because of a lack of vote. So people gotta fix their mindset when it comes to that. Those are things that are very, very important when it comes to accountability.
No, absolutely. And these numbers are what I pulled up this morning. And as of the time of putting my notes together, 89% of the votes were counted. So there's enough to state what it is. But as you can see, these numbers can still fluctuate some because not all the votes are in.
Right.
And it's a ballot measuring that will legalize recreational for adults 21 and over, expunge most of the records of past arrests and convictions. And it would allow people with marijuana-related non-violent offenses to petition for release for incarceration or parole and probation and have those records expunged.
Yeah, the expungement is definitely necessary. It's just been long overdue that people have been prosecuted for just the possession. It's not violent. There's no violence. There's nothing that's hurt anybody. When people are self-medicating, to hold them liable for self-medicating is just absurd.
No, absolutely. And when we look at all the other things out there, people who are on opiates and alcohol, self-medicating drugs, people are out there needing the help. they're seeking it themselves, and they're seeking it in the wrong ways when we've got this plant that's natural that can help.
Absolutely. And when you talk about alcohol, alcohol's legal. When you talk about opioids, which is still a Schedule I drug,
right,
it's legal if it's prescribed. So this is a circumstance where the cannabis itself can be prescribed for the oils, for the smokables, for treatment, including the topicals for pain management. This is something that's just absurd at this point, and more change needs to happen. And I commend these states for getting it on their ballots and the voters getting out and voting for these measures to help people who need it, especially for the ones who don't even necessarily use it. It's on the ballot. You have no choice but to vote or not vote for it.
right.
And those are things that's just as important.
Now, speaking of voting not for it, Arkansas voters rejected a ballot to legalize, and their percent was 56% no, with 499,000 votes, 44% yes at 395. That population is 3 million. So you had almost 900,000 people vote in this particular ballot.
And once again, it's close to that's about 1/3. So it's a little bit more, a little less than a third. It's a little bit more than 25%, but I mean, still, when you're looking at it, that threshold is still no more than 10%,
right,
on the vote. But unfortunately, it still goes to who's the leadership there, who's the governor, who's the council or Senate rep, and where their views stand. They lead people's mindsets, and obviously in this state here, they were against it.
Right. So with this, right now they're saying that 92% of the votes have been counted. So still a little fluctuation, but sounds like it has enough to go with the no's. But what it does strike down is adults 21 and over could possess and use up to an ounce. But even more so, grants would be given to 8 existing medical facilities so they could obtain a second license for non-medical sales. So that part has been struck down as well.
1 second, Nate.
Yep. So while he's doing that, for example, that means that they voted no on this. So now these places will still have the medicinal end, but they're not going to be able to do it for non-medical sales when you've already got the cultivation, the procedure, and everything in place that kind of hand-tied them there.
No, definitely, you're absolutely right on that. And the good thing about it is for the youth, as long as they can make amends for the youth, so they don't go through any emotional drawbacks. And this is a thing when you talk about mental health itself, it's just so important that you do not, in this fragile state in time, this energized emotional state that we in when we find that we go through adversities that are beyond our control. These are the small things that help.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen the results of testing for years now that present that and back that. We just don't have everybody on board yet, which is one of the reasons for this foundation, for this podcast, to educate. We are seeing it, and a lot of people are. We just haven't gotten it together enough to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, day by day, step by step, we got to keep moving forward. We got to get people on the same page, in the outlook, for better. These are all the things that help us move forward and get people in a healthier state for a better quality of life.
Right. Now, here's one that initially kind of shocked me, but having been up there before, I understand it. North Dakota voters turned down the legalization ballot initiative. 99% of these votes have been counted. 55% of Nordax voted no to Measure 2 that would have legalized it. It's very similar to a bill in 2021, like Arkansas. The initiative would have legalized the possession of 1 ounce for adults 21 and over and allow them 3 plants to cultivate in their home. Now, real quickly on that, we've discussed them before. 130,000 voted no. 107,000 voted yes. So roughly we have just under 800,000 people in that state. 238,000 voted on this initiative.
Which is about 1/3.
Correct. Now, as we stated before, I think the reason why that kind of got struck is because they do have an opiate problem up there. They have a major drug issue up there on multiple levels. And I think the mindset was, if we're going to pass this, all we're doing is encouraging it, which is not the case as we know. But I'll pull it back to current a little bit to show you what I've seen and what I believe as to why that got voted no.
You know, Nate, and just an outlook for North Dakota itself. North Dakota State I wouldn't say that for the entertainment industry, I don't see where it can compare to cities on the East Coast like Atlanta, Jacksonville, Miami, DC, Maryland, DC, Baltimore, Philly, New York. So when you look at that state is definitely not an impoverished state. That state is not a state where it has a high homelessness rate. So my concerns is that state is probably traditionally still a conservative state.
It is pretty conservative, very true. And a lot of that, of course, now it's less than some because of some of the regulations Biden has done with the fracking and whatnot. But when I was in Williston myself, you roughly, if you took population-wise of the people, not necessarily the people that live there, but the people who were working there and at the time a resident, in that city alone, for example, you probably had one female for every 20 males in that city. That's how big the fracking was up there, that you had that many people. And no, they're not homeless, but they're living in trailers or camps, as they call them.
Well, I think that state is based off of a lot of opportunity for the coal and mining industry. So you got to go where the work is at.
Right.
And being able to up and move your home. I think that's why the mobile home market is very prevalent up there in that state, because you're able to up and move and go to where the work is actually at and maintain that convenience itself. What I do know about North Dakota is that the monies are really good up there. There's no shortness when it comes to the pay itself. The pay is, I would say, in any regards, excellent in that area, but you lack the social components. And in that state, I feel that you may have a number of possible depression going on there because of the isolation. Then the weather itself is very drastic. It's either drastically hot or drastically cold. So even in those standpoints, the social elements there, as an individual, you got to be strong. And whatever you need to do to maintain yourself, you need it.
No, absolutely. And, here, for example, Metro Atlanta or even any part of Georgia, you can get to a entertainment facility or a mall or something within, at least a 45-minute to an hour drive, even with traffic. Up there, that one particular city, like where I was talking about, the next closest mall is almost 3 hours away.
Oh, gosh.
So you add those elements in, and just like you said, there's not a lot to do up there, at least not last time I was there. So there is that depression, that loneliness, away from family, friends, whatever. And that contributes to the alcohol per capita. They're in the top 3 in the U.S. And it also goes to the opiate problems, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I think for every state, every city, in those secluded areas, the social norms is what really prevail. And if alcohol is the choice, that is what is going to be the leading cause of alcoholism, if not, drunk driving or impaired driving.
Absolutely. Now, on the south side, South Dakota also rejected the measure to legalize it. 53% no, 47% yes. 183,000 voted no, 163,000 voted yes. In a population of a state of 914,000 people, 346 voted on this initiative. And that's with 99% of the votes being counted as of this morning.
Yeah, that's right at 35%, 36%. So we still falling around that same threshold, Nate.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
it shows you right there. It's just a pattern. Um, South Dakota has a little bit larger of a population than North
Yep.
Dakota, surprisingly. Um, but at the same time, when you just look at the populace and the norms there, um, they have a lot of things that are in place that are more down the road than Georgia is, um, as far as acceptance.
Hmm.
But to fully legalize it, um, I think it's still society from a societal standpoint a taboo. You
Correct.
just got some people who still have the old conservative views of that. No, I don't want that, or no, I don't want to see it. You know, cannabis, the smell of the smokable, um, it, it is pungent to some people.
Yeah.
It's not a desirable smell, and when you smell it, it's itself it creates an abrasive mindset toward the person who may be in possession or smoking it. So, once again, if you take that same circumstance and you took it to Washington State out in Seattle, nobody would even shed it, look a particular way or feel a particular way. Same thing as Denver. Those are the things you just got to look at, that from that society itself, it still may still be considered a taboo.
No, absolutely. And, we see that all the time in multiple realms because of that. So you're spot on that. And the next thing we want to talk about was Colorado. Now, this is too close to call. They had about to legalize psychedelics. And as of this morning, it was too close, 51 yes, 49 no. Now, here's a big number for you. Almost 900,000 voted yes, and just under 900,000 voted no. So basically, those numbers is 1.75 million people voted on this agenda. 5.8 million people are in that state.
Wow, that's a bigger number.
Absolutely, it is.
That is closer to 40%. Um, wow, that what I got to say about Colorado is that state has been one of the pioneers in the referendum for change when it comes to that, and they're pushing it. I mean, psychedelics is the next therapy that is out there to treat mental illness.
No, absolutely. And that's one of those things that, we're looking at all the different realms of how to help people in mental illness through the plant, through different cultivations of it, because of how important we've seen that it is. Now,
Yeah,
here's a very interesting number for you. Out of all of those numbers that we pulled of those 5 states that we talked about, the amount of people that voted just on these initiatives is 6,415,979 people. Now, this is an interesting number. In Georgia alone, for the governor race, and these are the 2 main ones, Abrams and Kemp. I don't have the numbers on Hazel, but in Georgia alone, 3,906,246 million people voted just for the governor in Georgia. So compare that contrast of those 5 states that voted for this initiative, just compared to Georgia, to give you more of a balanced background. Just under double people voted for these 5 states initiatives as they did just for the governor in Georgia. How are those numbers?
well, you got to take that in the Western Hemisphere, where the weather is more ideal, the populace is even more. That there's a difference in those demographics. Those states represent land masses, a lot of farmland, and they are producers of the goods that we consume on a regular and daily basis. So still, once again, to me, it still goes back to the landscape in those areas is totally conservative. Um, when you think about the people, I'm surprised with those conservative views that more didn't get out to vote. But right here in our home state of Georgia, we are fighting a challenge. We need leadership that will lead not only the people, but erase the racial divide that is going on right here in our own state. One of the things that you got to really look at and focus on in the last presidential election, the commander in chief of the United States accused the governor of not supporting and not being there from the standpoint of voting and helping him get back into office. Georgia ended up being a turn state that swung to the Democratic side of the elections, which put a Democratic president into office. And then when you think about some of the things, what the governor, who is a Republican governor, in addition, some of the things after that last election, he did things that, in my opinion, continue to perpetuate that racial divide, especially with the vote itself, with the limitations that he put in place for people to be able to vote. Those were concerns, and I think those concerns got more people out to vote. But overall, when you think of what it takes to win that office, he still had enough qualifications to still lead the state in a second term.
Absolutely.
So I definitely, from Governor Kemp, there are days where I salute him. There are days where I question him. But his leadership totally overall has been adequate enough to still lead Georgia to not only recover post-COVID, but in a new election term. Hopefully he can double down on his initiatives and make good on his initial campaign promises from his first tenure.
Absolutely. Now, on some other state news, Alaska, the governor appointed members to a marijuana task force, which he created. Now, I don't have all the individual details. We'll have to follow up on that. But that's going to be interesting to see which way they're leading with it. Are they going to be very, very evasive on what they're looking for? Are they going to be a little bit more lax? And what are they looking for?
Absolutely. And the task force itself, Nate, it can be on one side of the line where they're all about enforcement, or the task force can actually be looking for leeways to actually help people safely consume and continue to develop and research the industry.
Exactly. That's why we're bringing that up, because you hear these words and immediately people think, oh, they're going to do stings, they're going to do roadblocks, they're going to do setups, they're going to do this. That may not be the case.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nate, if you can pause for about 2 minutes for me.
Okay. Yeah, go right ahead. I'll hit these notes real quick and get feedback if we need to. But yeah. So in another news, and I'm actually pulling up what it's talking about, create a task force in September to review current regulations, fees, tax structures that are impacting the operators. So see right there, that's stating that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad news that he's created a task force. He's just trying to go in and see, how can we help this? How can we advance it? How can we further it? So that's what he's got going. And this is an article as of November 8th. So that'll be something definitely keep an eye on, where that goes, what the results are. But there's other things too. Indiana, the senator tweeted out, substance abuse, especially opioids, continue to be a challenge across Indiana. As experts have told us, medical cannabis can help reduce the opiate use and overdoses.
That is a big statement by that governor. By that senator. And
right.
You just got to look at that. The opiates that are being sold today has contributed to a large number of deaths for people who have been in pain or dealing with some form of pain management. My spouse has been going through a series of pain management from her surgeries, and in her latest surgery, the doctors literally told her, please follow the dosing. If you take one more dose more than what's prescribed, you can stop breathing.
Right.
Just to hear that is so serious. I mean, that means that when you stop breathing, you're dead.
Right.
So
And
I mean, it's something that when you look at solutions that are necessary to help and aid people in this, the opioids itself. I've lost a friend to the use of opioids, and that was for substance abuse itself. He was going through a series of back related issues that he had his bad days where he couldn't even get up,
mm-hmm.
and he would take those opioids and he would pop them like Skittles in his mouth, and the thing about it is that his body succumbed to those opioids one day, and he did not wake up. And it's terrible when people are looking for relief. Very, very good person. Wasn't the person that was out there committing atrocities and so forth. He's just trying to earn a living. He was a blue collar worker, and he needed his pills. He needed his pills to get to his job and to be able to perform and just endure the pain of having a broken back.
Well, the thing is, too, it also becomes a mindset. You become so used to doing it that sometimes you avoid and ignore the side effects, how it's making me feel. There's something different because you've got to get through. You've got to provide. You've got to do this. For example, when I had my neck surgery 15 years ago or whatever it was, I was basically given an open prescription that anytime I needed a refill, here it is, go get it. And this has also happened to, I don't think now as much, but years ago, many of these pro wrestlers, they were on the road. They would call the doctor, get an automatic refill. We saw it with Chris Benoit. We saw it with several people. So it's a problem on multiple ends, multiple levels.
Absolutely. And you look at all of the people who, when they go through and they're just trying to maintain their quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
And the quality of life itself is physical and mental. And mentally, when you're beat down, you may take a little bit of extra just to subside the pain that you mentally are enduring, which is tough. And then your body, you have the physical pain of your body just physically not being able to perform.
Right.
And you got some people that will double down, triple down, quadruple down on the dosages, and those dosages can be lethal. So for the most part, God bless and God help those people who need just a little bit more strength to keep going. They need everything from a balance standpoint they can get. They need a good counselor to talk to, somebody who can bring them down and de-escalate those edgy mindsets when it comes to dealing with pain management. Like I said, mental health is the probably the number one factor. The mind staying strong and enduring what it's going through, because you're no longer normal, or you're no longer you're not perfect itself. So whatever your body is fighting at that point in time, whatever aid that you need at that point in time, it's just maintaining that balance. And that balance is tough. From one person to the next, it's just tough. The resources from one person to the next is not the same. It's limited for some, and abundant for others. We just have to figure out and work out a way where it can be balanced across the board for people not only to safely, but to reasonably and economically receive any type of medicine or treatment to keep them going.
Yep. And on the medical end, like you're bringing up, Arkansas will have a meeting next Thursday about a medical marijuana commission. Oklahoma, regulators will begin accepting public comments on proposed medical cannabis ruling again this coming Tuesday. And in Washington, officials have extended the free medical cannabis patient and caregiver registrations through January 3rd.
That is definitely necessary in DC. The most important thing about extending the registration period is just allowing people to safely be in the system, so that way that they're not persecuted. I don't want to say unlawfully persecuted, but persecuted from being in possession or seeking treatment, or possessing any portion of the plant to get the treatment that they need. So the open and the open registration period or open enrollment period is definitely necessary. The commissions itself, once again, you're still looking at understanding what's necessary to create what is called the modern day norm. What's normal, and that commission will make the decisions in the best the best outlook for the community. They may not get it spot on the first time, but the commission is supposed to be there to at least be optimistic to the change.
Yeah, absolutely. And the House Oversight Subcommittee on Civil Liberties schedules a hearing next week titled Developments in State Cannabis Law and Bipartisan Cannabis Reforms at the Federal Level. That's something we definitely need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, absolutely. They're at the very, very top. And the development itself for statewide cannabis law, it from the federal level, that is what's going to allow more states to get in line and support that change. Right now, with states fighting the Fed, sometimes it may be looked at as a fight that you cannot win. But Nevada is showing you firsthand, we're going to fight and we're going to do what we choose to do as a state, regardless of what the Fed say. So,
right. So all of this that we've discussed leads us to this. And basically, I know there's people asking, now this is one particular viewpoint, this isn't across the board, but people are asking, well, what happens to the cannabis bills now? And what would happen if the cannabis bills, if Republicans take the House and the Senate? To your point, what you had stated about some people going out and voting, maybe in a runoff even, if their candidate didn't win, whether it be governor, Senate, whatever, they're maybe caught more in their feelings, less likely, not going to go out for the second vote, whatever it might be. This is exactly one of those viewpoints. And this is from Fitzgerald Pablo Zunic, which I'm not too familiar at this point, but he believes that it would be less optimistic about SAFE plus becoming a lame duck if Republicans take both chambers. He's worried that the SAFE Plus may not be a high priority for the Senate leadership in a lame duck session. Republicans taking control of both chambers of Congress could lead to a post-election funk among Democrats, like what you're talking about. So, mindset is if they take it over, now the Democrats maybe don't want to work together, don't want to be at that time bipartisan, or maybe in their feelings to where we don't want to get involved right now.
And that is a tremendous challenge and problem. And the thing about it is, right now, it all falls down to how many voters believe in the Republican Party or their Republican candidate opposed to their Democratic candidate. That's really what it comes down to. There's no way. If you look at all of the elections, there has not been many runaway elections where somebody won 75, 80, 90% of the vote. The votes are so close to 55, 45, 60, 40. 60, 40 is almost more than decisive, but anything less than 60, 40 is almost like the flip of a coin. And when you're so close to 50, 50, it's going to be so many people on the flip side of that decision that's going to be spurned, angry, upset, feel that they voice and vote didn't count, and it creates that resentment. So
now,
those are the things that we got to fix. We got to figure out how, away from a society standard, to have our candidates understand the totality of what it takes. I think that education is really, really important. And when we had Shane on the show, educating people on norms, technology, the things that can help and enhance society itself. The old system is not taking account into to new ways, new opportunity, new tech. There's new technologies that is available that some people just don't even know how to operate it because their mind is closed to it. So we got to get those people to embrace some of the nuances that are available to us today.
Absolutely. Now, this is not all bad news, though. And a lot of this, I don't want to necessarily say smoke and mirrors, but a lot of this is stated in a way that maybe makes it sound a little more abrasive than it truly is, because there's a scenario that Senator McConnell, possible future Senate leader, may press Republican senators to withhold support for the SAFE Plus until the 118th Congress. Now, you might be asking, what is that? The 118th Congress is the scheduled meeting in Washington, D.C. that begins January 3rd, 2023, and that goes until January 3rd, 2025, when our next president would take office. We would be skeptical about more comprehensive reform in the 118th Congress, with Republicans potentially taking control of both chambers, although we should not overlook the efforts of Representatives Mace from South Carolina and Joyce, HO. So there's a little bit here and there. They're saying that it still could happen, but keep in mind, regardless, they're saying it probably won't happen until 118th Congress, which would be January. And we're at the holiday season where, let's be honest, we're not going to see a lot from Congress over the next month and a half anyways.
No, no. A lot of people enjoy that time with their families,
Right.
and they will take that time off. And that's more the reason why when you think about mental health itself, I think that they were proposing making the work week a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week at one point in time. And I think that in society now, how much more we're exposed to is just wearing us and beating us down even more. And balance is truly important. And that's why we need plant sciences to that on the medicinal side to help us with mental health and to physically be able to perform, to endure the pains and the aches that we have from one day to the next. It's even way more car accidents these days now.
Oh, yeah.
So what about the pain management post car accident, and some of the gruesome car accidents that I've seen where people have survived those accidents, but some didn't. And you just got to think about the long-term effects of pain management itself. And the plant science in the cannabis plant itself needs to be researched even further, so that way that there is a safer alternative in the marketplace for all Americans.
Correct. And that's the thing, too. We're not just talking about, as you said, the physical pain from the car wreck. You have emotional. You have the mental part where now what happens to Christmas? Do I have the money for these medical bills plus Christmas? Do I have the rent? Do I miss work? So there's more than just that physical pain. The emotional and mental is an aspect as well.
Well, I think this is what you got to look at. In the great country of Canada, Canada has medical all the way across the board for all of its citizens. And I feel that that's the same thing that should be adopted right here in America. We should all have the equal opportunity to be able to have a safe alternative for treatment, for quality of life, and for our existence. And it really comes down to the leadership when they make the decisions for things that are in the best interest of the people. The closest thing that we've ever seen come to a commander in chief looking for a alternative for the people was President Obama when he created Obamacare. He wanted to give everyone a reasonable alternative to have medical available to them to get the treatments that they need. That is tremendous, and I commend him for that. And I on the flip side of just being a businessman, I understand why there was a lot of pushback when it came to Obamacare. We came from a time of where we were raised and taught to get a really good education. But in order to get a good education, many of us had to go into debt, take student loans, and go out and You go in debt to get a greater and better education for a better way of life. Once you get that education, you got to pay that. You got to pay it back, and the only way you can pay it back is to get paid for the services that you rendered. So if you went out and got an excellent education and you started an excellent practice and you wanted to be paid at a particular level, Obamacare did not allow you to charge what you wanted to charge. It gave you a reasonable, it gave the person a reasonable means to afford those charges when you may have established your benchmark a particular way. Let's talk about salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Salaries of your medical staff. You may have guaranteed somebody $75,000 a year, and when you talk about Obamacare and it prefixed the numbers, now you may have to decrease that person's salary from $75,000 a year to $45,000 a year. That's a hell of a cut. So you have a lot of people in the medical industry that are just like, no, we don't want it. We don't respect it. We don't want no parts of it. And you got to understand, for the people who pride themselves on excellence and being the best practitioner they can possibly be, it comes at a cost. And Obamacare chipped away at that and said, no, it's this way or no way.
Right. And you got
And
to also remember from what you're saying, if, like you said, 75 down to 45, well, guess what? Their student loans didn't go from paying 10,000 a year down to 4,000.
absolutely. And that's when you take those points into account, those are the reasons why people's feelings and sentiments run totally deep. It's emotionally charged. And what it does is it creates those nuances in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Those situations, hey, the bills didn't get smaller, they got bigger.
Right.
So yeah, I'm gonna scream, I'm gonna scoff, I'm gonna curse, I'm gonna say things that may be a little selfish, self-centered, but it's in their mind for good reason. But at the same time, when you try to do something for the good of all people, there's pushback from it.
Oh, yeah.
Period, point blank.
Well, hopefully, what we did today is we kind of talked a little bit about what the change has been in the last 24 hours, gave some insight, but we see there's still a lot of work to do, not just moving forward with cannabis, but still in these votings. We've got runoffs in I don't know how many states, but at least Georgia, probably a couple of others. So, everybody, it's still down to educate yourself, see what the candidates believe, what they are looking for, and does it agree with your mindset as well? Still have work to do.
Absolutely. So we definitely are down to the wire for our Senate leaders. It looks like there will be a runoff between Warnock and Herschel Walker. So we just have to see what happens. In the meantime, Governor Kemp is in, and we need to monitor his leadership accordingly and give him a nudge when a nudge is needed, to keep him on task.
Now, one other thing on that side with Warnock and Herschel, what some people may not have seen or heard from what they just saw on the polls, the Green Party, the Libertarian third candidate, got 2.1% of the total vote. So he kind of threw off the whole entire balance of who may not won, because he, I think, got roughly 84,000 votes that kind of put that into that hold.
Yeah. If we go into it even further, as I pointed out to you, Georgia's made up of 159 counties, and Herschel took the majority of all the counties.
Correct.
But the thing about the counties is the counties don't represent just one vote itself. If that was the case, Herschel would be declared the winner under that circumstance. But Senator Warnock itself, he has the total popular vote. So the individual votes is what matter, and it is a 30,000 person disparity between both candidates, and that's enough for a runoff. And when you take in account where do those 84,000 votes place?
Right.
Hey, that 50,000 is the difference of a bigger winning margin, whether it may go to one side or the other. And that's the difference. So the runoff will definitely determine it. Whoever whichever candidate is endorsed, maybe all those 80,000 votes may go to that one side. I don't know. So that right there is the next move. Who's going to get those votes?
No, possibly so. And that's why it's important, for example, and I'm not saying that I'm a political expert by any means, but it's important to understand what you just stated. When we go to the president, that's where we have the electoral college. But when we do these votes in the states, like you're talking about, it is off of the popular vote, not the majority, like you were saying with Herschel, because if it was the same premise as the electoral college, Herschel would already have won it.
Absolutely.
So knowledge and understanding how the political process works is something that you need to do your research on, because it is important.
And the one thing I can tell you, that neither candidate was perfect.
Correct.
So whomever goes in, you have the same equal opportunity to go in for your candidacy. You have a series of beliefs that you believe in, and what you have to do is speak those to the people. And as long as you're in tune with the people, you got their vote, and you possibly can get the candidacy for that state or for the area that you're actually running your candidacy in. So we need more leaders. Yes. And men or women, we definitely need them out there. And you stand true to your beliefs, but just have to be able to endure the political muck that comes with running in a candidacy, because it does get messy.
Oh yeah, we've seen it.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like I said, I hope that we shed some light. We gave some information. Go out and keep doing your research. Next week, we will be in Vegas broadcasting, honestly, probably more than just on Wednesday, from MJ BizCon. And I'm excited to see all of the stuff, because it's a massive industry and convention.
Yeah. And I think, Nate, what we need to do this week is get together and add segments, talk about it. We'll put a flyer up, and maybe we can try to maintain a dialogue, so that way we can hit particular areas of interest and talk to different people of interest. But what we may have to do is, as we stream all the way through there, we want people to see the magnitude of that event itself. So we'll still go and outline a number of areas and discuss different areas, so that way you can see how big the industry is. It's really important. It blew me away that first year. I was not aware and prepared for all of the information that I was given, and I'm excited to go in to see what's new, and also to reestablish the acquaintances that we made from last year.
Absolutely. Well, with that, we're going to call it a good day until we see you next week. Sam, tell them how they can reach out and connect to you between now and then, and always.
Check me out, Big Boy Sam with 2 M's on IG. I'm also on LinkedIn as well, Sammy Mumphrey, same name that's showing right here on the screen. Please check us out, follow us. Please, if you have any gainful insight on any area in the industry, we welcome it. So please come and be a part of our show. Please come and be a part of our movement as well, as we look to bring more information and knowledge to this industry.
Absolutely. And as we said before, you can follow the Mate Foundation, not just on Facebook, also on Twitter, also on IG, all underneath Mate Foundation. And we have the YouTube channel where we do all of these broadcasts. They are in the library there, as well as our Facebook page, LinkedIn, and more. And we're going to keep building that. You can reach out to me personally at DJNQ75 on both Instagram and Twitter. And man, I look forward to broadcasting for you guys next week in Vegas.
Yes. Let's go.
With that,
2022.
Absolutely. With that, and you know what? If anybody's watching this that's going to be out there, connect to us. We want to meet up with you while we're out there.
Definitely. Let's do it. Be a part of our show, and we'll be a part of yours too. Let's
Absolutely. Go. So, yep. Everybody have a great week, and we will talk to you from Vegas next week.